Hey everyone, Mike from Just Watch, back with another Just Watch review. Excited for this one today. We're doing an intro a little bit different in that we're doing it selfie style, live from my backyard. It's a beautiful spring morning finally here in New England. We haven't had many yet, so I'm definitely out enjoying this weather before I get into the studio. Wanted to give you guys a look. We have had this Tudor Black Bay Black. This is reference number 79230N. We've had this on the wrist for a little over 3 weeks now, so I wanted to give you guys a good comprehensive rundown on this watch. Also, if you want to know more about Tudor Black Bays, about 4 to 6 weeks ago we did the Tudor Black Bay Steel. That's the same watch except for it has the date complication, a little bit different bezel. So go back through my channel, you can see the review on that. Also, wanted to give you a wrist check today. Today we are wearing the Rolex Submariner. This is the newest version, no date, with the Serichrome bezel insert. So excited to be doing a review on this one too. We've only had this one on the wrist for not even a week, so haven't been able to give you a lot of info on it to date yet. Haven't really checked time on it yet. Just kind of set it, forget it, wear it, see how it does. So I will give you a review on that one soon. So everyone, let's dive into this 79230 Tudor Black Bay, and thank you for tuning in as always. Right, so here we are with the Tudor Black Bay Black 79230N. This is the 41 millimeter diameter version from Tudor. And this is also just a quick way for you guys, if you're looking at Tudor Black Bays and you're wondering, an easy way to reference between the original first gen version that had the ETA movement and the later version like this one with the in-house Tudor movement. First off, two real quick visual cues on the dial. Your 12 o'clock has the shield here, where the ETA movement has the rose. And we have 3 lines of signing at the 6 o'clock, where the ETA version has the automatic movement smiley face. So it's like a U shape, if you've seen that. So that's a real quick and easy way to tell the difference between the original Gen 1 with the ETA movement and the later versions like this watch with the Tudor in-house MT5602 movement. So let's talk about this watch and your dimensions and get into the mechanics of it. First off, dimensions, 41 millimeter case diameter. That is from the 9 to the 3, edge to edge, excluding the crown. 51 millimeter tip to tip on the lugs, and 14.8 millimeter thickness. I've heard people complain about the thickness on this watch. Hasn't been an issue with me. We'll come back to that in a second. Remind me. We have a no crown guard crown, 8 millimeter crown by 2.7 millimeter thick with a nice coin edge. And you have that really nice kind of a step up bezel, also with a nice coin edge that nicely matches what's going on the crown, and a domed sapphire crystal. You can see how that steps up out of the case. Really kind of a nice vintage feel to it. Just the overall aesthetic on this watch, I think they really nailed it. You know, with the bezel, the red triangle, the gilt on the dial, the crystal with that little step up. Just overall, I think they're really, and also kind of a tricky thing that they did to give the transition from the bracelet to the case is they went to a 22 millimeter case, lug width for the end links here. What that does is it maintains that kind of vintagey transition from case to bracelet. Bear in mind, the original generation of Submariners, I think, were 36 millimeter and then later transitioned to 39 millimeter and then to 40, of course. And they utilized a 20 millimeter strap, but the overall aesthetic, the relation between bracelet and case was very similar to this. So what Tudor did by going to a more modern 41 millimeter case side is they maintained that aesthetic by going to that bigger lug width. So there you go there. Overall finish on this watch, you have that beautiful brush finish from Tudor and Rolex, as you would expect. They execute this better than anybody. You can see there. So nothing but brushed finish on the top of the bracelet and the top of the lugs. You do have that gorgeous bevel that we've all come to know and love on Rolex and Tudor that runs from tip of the lug to tip of the lug on both sides. And that delineates the difference between the brushed and the polished finish on the case sides. There's your polished case side, and there's a good look at the full width of the case, and we'll give you a look at the crown side as well. And then here, wipe off some of these fingerprints here. I had somebody comment to me the other day on my channel that, they thought it was gross that I don't wear gloves and what have you. But you know what? I used to use my hands for a living, and it's a tool watch, and it's stainless steel. Fingerprints are going to wipe off. I'm not a jeweler, so, if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but get over it. You have bigger problems in life, I'm sure, than complaining about somebody on YouTube not wearing gloves. So anyways, let's talk about the overall execution on the dial and the bezel to begin. So your bezel is an aluminum bezel insert, your 15-minute countdown, as is your traditional, going back to your first gen Rolex and Tudor Submariners. Your red triangle, which I really love, that little touch of color up there surrounding your lume pip. And then, of course, applied index markers in gold with the kind of a vintagey lume. I want to give you a look at the difference in lume color between the Rolex, the more modern Rolex, and the Tudor. Now, I wouldn't call this faux patina. I would call it more just like ivory, as opposed to the faux has that really like burnt almond, almost like pumpkin look that, if you look at Steinhardt, some of the other companies that are, or actually even Omega has gone into a lot of faux patina, which I'm not really a fan of. I do like the color on here. It's not over the top, but it kind of meets the gilt dial coloring better. I think it just gives the watch a nicer overall aesthetic. Your bezel here is a 60-click bezel, so it's only 1 click per minute, of course. And it has probably the best action of any dive watch I've handled to date, and that is not an exaggeration. Part of that is because there's zero friction underneath this bezel. You're feeling nothing but high quality bearing that it's turning on. The only other resistance that you feel when you're turning this bezel is from the spring detent underneath. And it's a very crisp click every time you turn. I'll be quiet here so you can hear it. So it's a very nice crisp click, just a really nice spring detent underneath that bezel, giving that feedback. And there's never any doubt where you're at on these markers when you're turning it around. And I like the more positive feeling of that 60 click bezel as opposed to the more finer 120 click bezel like you're getting on a lot of modern dive watches these days. So that's kind of a quick look at the bezel. I really like this. I think that Tudor really knocked everything that has to do with mechanical execution. They just really did a great job with. And we'll get into the crown and the movement here in a second. We kind of talked about the sapphire crystal already. You can see that nice dome action to it right there with that nice step up. You can see the little bit of a step up from the lume pip as well. So I really enjoy this sapphire crystal. I think it has AR coating too. It doesn't seem as reflective as some of the Rolexes that I've worn, some of the modern Rolexes that I've worn over the last few days. So I haven't confirmed it, but I do think that it does have some AR coating on here somewhere. It doesn't have the blue color though, so I don't know how they pulled it off without the blue. And then let's talk about your signing and your dial overall. So as we mentioned, it does have a gilt dial. You can see the nice minute track. It's a closed minute track going around, bolder at each hour marker, finer in between. Applied gold index markers with the lume that we've already discussed. And the lume, I wanted to mention, I would call it hyperactive. If you go outside on even a somewhat cloudy day and the face of the watch gets some exposure to the light, when you walk back inside, it's jumping off the dial. So it's really impressive and very active. It doesn't take a lot of light to activate it. Definitely lasts all night. I've woken up at 3:30, 4 in the morning. The watch is still glowing. I unfortunately have to wear glasses these days, and I have no problem picking up the watch even without my glasses on. So really nice job. You can see it has the long triangle at the 12. That is your classic vintage Rolex and Tudor Submariner markings. It's definitely smaller in dimension markings with your stick at the 369 and your circles everywhere else. Definitely not the maxi dial. Here, just give you a quick comparison. You can see how much thicker the index markers are on the newer generation of Rolexes compared to the vintage kind of look on the Tudor Black Bay here. I really appreciate that they did that. I like the gold coloring a lot, as well as the gold handset. So you have a 3 handset here. Very long minute hand that goes well into the minute track, as does your second hand. You can see it sweeping around there. And then your snowflake hour hand, which is very visible and legible to read. The dial and minute hand or the handset overall are very legible. No problem picking up any of it, including that loom pip that you have going there, which is quite nice size on the second hand. You have, as we mentioned, the signing already, your Tudor logo, Tudor Genève at the 12 and then the 3 lines. And then let me zoom in a little bit here so we can see underneath. You have your Swiss made down below the minute track there. And there's a nice look at how nicely that gilt signing is applied. You can see just really beautiful. And then the dial itself is kind of like an eggshell finish, black, almost like a matte black. Definitely not glossy black. And I think that was a nice decision by Tudor, and that it gives it just works better with the vintage. It doesn't have that real shiny new modern look. It just works really nicely. Your crown, as we mentioned, 8 by 2.7 millimeter with a coin edge, screws down into this black aluminum tube. Very positive feel when you're setting it, even unscrewing it. Just the threads, the pop when you reach the end, and the threads just feel very nice, precise, and smooth. And then when you pop this out to hack it, you can see it's just very smooth, stops instantly, and it's also a very positive feel as you're setting the watch, which I very much appreciate. When you stop, there's no creep. There's some watches where once you put that pressure on the crown, when you let off the pressure, the minute hand will actually swing back a tiny bit. There's none of that nonsense here. So you can see it's very smooth and very precise. So I'm going to come back around to 1010 just for purposes of aesthetics here. So we'll come back to 1010 and a little bit after. And then going back in, it's a very positive pop in, and then catching the thread. There's never any doubt that you have caught those threads. There's ever any feeling that you're going to cross thread the watch or anything like that. So very nice positive feeling overall with the mechanical aspect of both the crown and the bezel, which I greatly appreciate. Your bracelet, as we said already, Tudor and Rolex execute this brushed finish impeccably. You can see it is your vintage style riveted bracelet. Now, I wanted to mention these rivets on the video and in still photos, if you've seen this watch, they look a lot more, they really jump off the video and still photos much more than they do in real life and on your wrist. And I'm not sure why that is. I think it's kind of interesting. But so there's your riveted bracelet going down to your clasp. Bear in mind, I have been wearing this watch for 3 weeks, and it does have a few very minor swirls. But for 3 weeks, it does seem to be very durable as far as the overall finish on the watch. The quality of the steel, the stainless seems very good. You can see your signing there, Tudor Genève, just very nicely executed internals, and then closes with a really nice snick and snap. It's a little bit shorter clasp, 3-position adjustment, so it has plenty of adjustment there. And you can see the way that they worked the Tudor Shield logo into the closure, opening it back up, just catch your thumbnail underneath, and then underneath there, and it opens back up. It is a firm open from this position. This opens without a problem, but when you get to here, it's definitely a little bit of a firm opening, which I don't mind. It just makes the watch less susceptible to accidentally opening. And there you go. And actually, let's take a look at the inside of the bracelet and then the case back as well. So the inside of the bracelet is chamfered and rounded off. You're not going to catch any arm hairs there. It is your matte finish. There is a little bit of signing there. I also wanted to show you, it is screw adjustment, of course, for setting your sizing. So no pins here. You can see I'm right in the middle of your 3-position micro adjust. And then your case back on this watch is very much traditional Rolex. I would venture to guess it probably uses a Rolex tool even, although 41 millimeter, maybe not, but that's the same tooling that Rolex uses with your diagonal brush and very minimal signing. They like to leave that back open for engraving, as many of these watches are given as gifts, as enduring gifts, and they like to have that left open for personalization. So there is your overall rundown on the outers of the watch. I think, like I said, they did a great job on the overall aesthetic on the watch, the vintage feel. But to me, the icing on the cake is the movement. And I'm going to tell you what that is or why that is. So what you have here, this is Tudor's in-house. So it's a Swiss-made movement. It's an MT5602. It is a 26 jewel vibrates along at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it's a 31.8 millimeter movement. The movement features a 70-hour power reserve, a silicone hairspring, so it requires no lube, which they say extends the lifetime of the movement. It is a free-sprung balance with a full balance bridge. It's regulated by micro screws on the balance bridge. Tudor feels that this gives the watch even more shock resistance over previous movements, and I will take their word for it. They've executed this extremely well. It is, of course, COSC certified, which means it has to fall within a 6-second range when it leaves the factory. And to me, as I said, that is the crown jewel on this. I have tested this watch over 3 weeks. It is losing under 2 seconds, not per day, per week. So this watch is accurate to within 2 seconds per week, which to me is phenomenal for an automatic movement. That's over the course of 3 weeks. I've checked it every week. I've reset it every week and let it go. And every time it has been within 2 seconds. So to me, that is phenomenal accuracy and just, what you really expect from a watch of this nature. Overall impression, I've said it a couple times already. I really love the vintage feel and the look. I think the 41 millimeter case size is a home run on my wrist. Actually, I wanted to talk about that too on the wrist. So people say that this hangs up cuffs. That has not been my experience at all. You can see how nicely that fits on my wrist. I have a 7-inch wrist. It definitely does not overwhelm my wrist whatsoever. And as I said earlier, no problems hanging up cuffs at all. So, in summary, if you are looking for a great automatic dive style watch, you want Swiss made, you're one of those people that just doesn't want to wear Rolex for whatever reason, you don't want to show off, you think Rolex is pretentious, what have you, but you want a watch that shares a lot of that classic DNA of Rolex in a name that people are still going to recognize, but not as much as Rolex. I would highly recommend the Tudor Black Bay series. I'm very interested in seeing their new Black Bay 58 too, which is a more traditional 39 millimeter diameter and even thinner case thickness. But for now, I highly recommend this watch. It's a retail $3,500 or right around $3,500 US dollar price point. And honestly, I think at this price, I don't think the watch can be beat. I think it's just overall Swiss made, durable, very accurate, and a great aesthetic. So I highly recommend this watch for anybody that's shopping in that price point for a Swiss or whatever brand dive watch. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I do appreciate you guys tuning in and getting through these episodes with me. Please do, if you've not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button below. Easy for me to say. And also, please leave us comments. Let us know what you think. Let's talk some watches. And also give us the thumbs up. It greatly helps with other users seeing our reviews and just the channel growing. So everyone, thanks again for tuning into this episode. We will talk soon. We'll be back soon actually with a review on both this Rolex and the Seiko Sumo. And then we're going to do the direct comparison between these two bad boys. And notice the time is set different. It's just because I was setting it during the review. So everyone, thanks again for tuning in to this episode. I do appreciate you tuning in once again, and we will catch you soon.